Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to episode 24 of Retro Hangover.
And hello, everyone out there listening on your favorite podcast streamer. You are listening to the Retro Hangover podcast, and I'm not doing alliteration for the second week in a row because, I'll just be honest, I was too lazy to write it, and I just didn't feel like it. And, well, anyway, I'm just being lazy. So this week, I will dial down my motivation, and I will introduce everybody. This is Chris Copleen talking. I'm your co-host, and we have our host, the crazy Konami kooky bastard, Shankowski.
You know, this lack of alliteration, I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't know what to do with myself.
I added a little bit, but I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it on our next episode. I needed to take a break.
All right. Well, if you say so.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I'm going to say up front right now, I feel like this will be, I don't want to say divisive because I don't think there are too many differing opinions. But let's just say, I think there'll be a little bit of salt. There'll be some seasoning on this particular episode.
Well, at least for certain parts, I think. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be plenty of positivity. There's going to be a large pocket full of negativity and cynicism. But I think we can make an overall positive experience about this. It's like remembering a family member that gets senile at the end of their life and says crazy racist things, but you remember them for all the positive things they did in their life.
Yeah, we're just going to be wistfully nostalgic. That's probably a good way of putting it.
I think the most painful thing, though, with those family members is you realize they were racist their entire life.
They were just awful all along.
Yeah, but their true colors showed later. But anyway, Shane, it's been a long 2 weeks. Not really. I think these 2 weeks have flown by. But how have you been doing, and what have you been up to?
I'm glad you asked. So here's the thing. We're gonna start this thing off with a shameless plug because why not?
Yeah, of course.
So if you've been following our brand spanking new Instagram feed, then you will see that I've started one new game, at least new to me, and then kind of starting up another one that I've been playing since I was 12 or whatever. But started up a brand new save file for Final Fantasy IX. I've never played it before, but I ended up buying an original copy of it from one of the many Square Enix North American store sales that they tend to have. And I think I picked that up along with, I want to say, Final Fantasy X and X-2. So I figured might as well pop in FF9 and see what that's all about. So I've been enjoying that so far.
You bought it directly from Square Enix, like a physical copy?
Yeah, man.
I know they still do it. If you don't mind me asking, how much did you drop down for it?
It was not a lot. I don't recall now because it was a little while ago, but for that copy of FF9 for the PlayStation, it was probably no more than $10.
That a physical copy, brand new?
Yeah, like shrink wrapped, like brand new, man.
Holy crap. Okay. Wow. All right, continue.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, no, this isn't any secondhand market stuff. Like they still have physical copies printed apparently, and they're trying to sell them off. But yeah, that and then the PS2 copies of 10 and 10-2. I also have an Xbox 360 version of 13 that is sitting on my shelf that I haven't started yet, but that'll probably come later.
Lucky.
So 9's been pretty good so far. I haven't gotten into it really deep yet. I will say that I immediately remembered how much I kind of don't like the frequency of random encounters. When I'm like trying to search an area for a lot of the hidden like chests or items that are pretty prevalent in that game, and I get stopped every like 20 seconds by a random battle. that's kind of frustrating, but I guess good for XP grinding. I don't know.
It's classical.
It is, yeah.
Puts everything into greatness.
But yeah, no, I've been doing that, and as I mentioned on Instagram, I've also decided to roll up yet another Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction character. So my brand new Hydra Frozen Orb Sorceress is like level 26, I think, right now. So that's always a good time. I also a quick plug if anybody is a D2 fan, or if you've maybe never played it and want to get into it and see what all the hubbub is about. Well, if you don't own a copy, you can actually still buy Diablo 2 legitimately from Blizzard for like $20 or something. And that comes with the, Lord of Destruction expansion and everything. But once you get that, if you don't already have it, go check out Path of Diablo. I believe it's just pathofdiablo.com. It's a private server that is it's legit as far as I know, and they do a really good job of basically recreating the Battle.net experience and keeping the game as close to how the original played as possible, while also kind of rebalancing some of the skills and the skill trees that were severely underused and things like that. So it's just some balance stuff that I think was probably really needed for the game. But that's what I've been playing on, and it's been a good experience. So definitely check that out.
Always time for Diablo 2, I guess.
Oh yes. But what about you, Chris? What have you been keeping busy with besides the book learning, I suppose?
Yeah. So like Shane said, I'm still in college. I'm going to be in college for probably another year and a half or so as I try to get my bachelor's degree. I've probably been overly concerned about whether or not our state will ever get a new governor or senator. So been paying attention to that. Good luck. Good old Florida. We'll figure it out one day. I don't know when that will be, but one day we'll figure things out. And in terms of video games, still hate myself, so I'm slowly getting closer to wrapping up my second playthrough of Persona 5. Like I said, I haven't had a lot of time really with college work and actual work to get deep diving into the video games. So I'm getting closer and closer to that. Got some of the trophies I didn't get last time because I'm trying to complete it, but I'm going to wait till my third playthrough if that ever happens to get the platinum, and that really bothers me because there's a quest in that game that so many Persona 5 talk about here. There's a character that gives you quests once you get a certain level of social link. If you haven't played it, I'm trying to talk to people who haven't played it before. But once you get like a certain reputation,
Hi, that's me.
Yes, you have to get a certain reputation with a certain character who gives you quests through your instant messaging system. And if you either miss the quest or he doesn't give it to you, you cannot make up that quest for the rest of the game. And one of the trophies is complete all the quests.
Oh, so this sounds like Dead Rising, and the reason I hate Dead Rising.
Right. I mean, the quest itself won't stop gameplay. It won't keep you from getting other quests.
Sure,
but
yeah.
it will keep you from getting the damn trophy/achievement. Mm-hmm. So when I'm trying to fully complete the game, this was, of course, a quest I got in my first playthrough, but didn't complete all the quests because at a certain point in the game, in order to get a quest from a character, you need to go to school, and you stop going to school. And I hadn't made it to the point with that character. And it's still there's still an entire quarter of the game left.
Well, anything that requires me to go to school to complete it, I don't want any part of. Right.
But so I'm just going to try and get whatever I can, except for that one trophy on this playthrough. And hopefully one day maybe I'll go back to it. But total amount of hours, and this is where I'm a sadist, I'm at 155. Of playing this game.
Respectable number.
And the first playthrough, like I said, 150 hours, so I'm going through the second playthrough a lot faster, but I'm really ready for something else. So I started playing Final Fantasy IX because I saw Shane post that Final Fantasy IX was going to be played by him, so I thought, hey, great opportunity to play a game that I have mixed emotions about and maybe do an episode on later so we can take down notes and maybe have a deep dive into it, because a lot of people do love Final Fantasy IX. I'll talk more about it then, but it's just one of those games I get about halfway through, and then I'm just like, screw it, I'm done with it. It's not because I'm overly frustrated. It's not because I hate the game. I like the game mechanics. I just think I'm turned off by the fact that they all look like a bunch of Jim Henson puppets, and the main character looks like a Jim Henson puppet of David Bowie. So that eventually...
Dude, that's exactly the thing that Brianna said too. We're going to save the world with David Bowie. I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. It's like the monkey half-son of David Bowie.
So... I can't get past that. The graphical style is just, it grates on me, but everything like gameplay mechanic wise, story wise, it has probably some of the most interesting plot points in a Final Fantasy game, because that can be expounded upon about like what is life, what's the meaning of life, what does it mean to be alive, stuff like that. But when they all look like Muppets, I don't know. I'm going to try. I'm going to really try and do it. It's a fun game, and hopefully an episode
one of the other funny
comes
things
out
about
of this.
it is I realized when I looked at the cover of the game case, I was like, there was like, I think there's like 5 of the characters on the case, and having never even played the game, I could already identify 3 out of the 5 just from general exposure to Final Fantasy material.
And Record Keeper.
Yeah, Record Keeper and Opera Omnia for sure. Like I was like, oh yeah, that's Zidane, that's Steiner. Like, yeah, no, I recognize all these people.
We'll talk plenty about Final Fantasy IX when we get to it. I have some pretty good stories. I'm sure you will too. It's a decent game. A lot of people love it, and I know why.
Oh, and Vivi.
Of course, I have my
Can't forget Vivi.
Oh, Vivi's awesome.
Yeah.
I love Vivi.
So, all right, Chris, what are we talking about today? What's our topic?
Since we didn't directly get to it at the beginning of the episode, but heavily alluded to it, today's topic will be about the immortal Konami. Rest in peace.
Konami.
Oh yes. Who doesn't love Konami? So that will be our episode today. To start off, I think it would be appropriate to start out with a brief history. What do you think about that, Shane?
You know what? I think that's an excellent idea, Chris. Why don't you take it away with the brief history of Konami?
So Lex Luthor walked into a bar one day in Japan on March 21st, 1969, and decided Superman was being a giant pain in the ass, so he wanted to create an evil empire, one the likes the world has never seen before, and use the guise of video games as a facade so he could do evil and nefarious things without ever getting caught. What? It wasn't Lex Luthor. I don't believe you. Fine. I mean, it was Kingpin, right? I got my universes messed up. No? Shit. Okay, anyway, Galactus, using the alias Kagemasa Kozuki, formed the company in the aforementioned date of March 21st, 1969, before officially becoming the Konami we all love and hate on March 19th, 1973. They originally started as a jukebox rental and repair business before developing arcade machines in 1978. The first Konami games that released would be Block Game, Block Invader, Spaceship, and Space King. I mean, these are truly humble beginnings. These aren't very original names.
Block and Space.
Block and Space. In 1981, Konami would see notable success with a little-known game as Frogger.
Never heard of it.
Less than a year later, Konami would establish a U.S. base of operations in 1982, and the quest for world domination and corruption was underway. While slowly infiltrating the arcade market, Konami began making games for the Atari 2600 and the Japanese exclusive MSX in the homeland. It wasn't long before Konami became a household name, well, for gamers anyway, when they started developing for Nintendo's Famicom, or the NES here in the States, or NES for assholes. The NES would see success with the birth of franchises like Castlevania, Contra, and Metal Gear, and handle licensed games well in the case of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Top Gun, and Goonies. And if you didn't know, if you had a game that you thought was made by a company called Ultra Games during this time, that was really Konami.
Sneaky
Nintendo
bastard.
had a super fascist third-party rule set back then about how many games a publisher could release. so many publishers created different brands to get around it. Ultra was that brand for Konami. Konami would continue to support the arcade and home markets well into the 16-bit era, developing games for all major systems like the Mega Drive/Genesis, SNES, the PC Engine/TurboGrafx 16, and even lesser-known Japanese-only computers like the Sharp X6800. Konami had defined itself as a talented studio with a plethora of successful IPs, building on the well-known franchises of the 8-bit generation while creating new IPs and solidifying the brand name. During the 32-bit era, Konami would continue to churn out genre-defining games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and Metal Gear Solid, and fresh new IPs like Silent Hill. Konami also corrupted the world, as is with all evil corporations, with the ushering in of the rhythm game genre. Known collectively as Beimani for its initial game Beatmania, they took Japan by storm with games like Beatmania, Poppin' Music, Guitar Freaks, and the ever-insidious and infamous Dance Dance Revolution. Konami wouldn't slow down moving into the 6 generations of consoles, which pretty much staying exclusive to the PS2 with games like Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, Silent Hill 2, and the ever-loved 3D Castlevania games. Maybe not the 3D Castlevania games.
Yeah, not so
much.
It
would still deliver to all systems, especially for the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, where the Metroidvania-themed Castlevania games would thrive in their native 2D environment. By the 7th generation, we would start to see a dark turn for Konami.
Dun, dun.
While there were great games released, they still mostly stuck to the well-established IPs like Metal Gear Solid and Winning Eleven, which is, a big Japanese professional soccer game.
I was going to say, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, it was a huge seller back in the day. Konami would openly focus more on pachinko machines, which are Japanese gambling devices, in the Japanese market. Yes. And be largely criticized for overworking their staff and exploiting their IPs. Much of this was brought to light at the dawn of the 8th generation, where Hideo Kojima, mastermind of the Metal Gear series, was pretty much publicly disgraced in the lead up to the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, including the cancellation of the highly anticipated Silent Hills for the PlayStation 4.
I'm still salty
It had
about
become
that.
apparent, yes, it had become apparent that Konami had become a husk or a shell of its former self, and many fans of the company revered it more for the company it was than the company it had become.
Do you hear that,
had
Blizzard?
Gone full evil. No, Activision is the one who needs to hear it. Blizzard is cool.
Debatable.
I guess that's a weird fun.
That's fine.
Pun.
Continue.
Oh, they're not Blizzard anymore. Yes. Anyway, Konami still does release games from time to time. However, including the recently released Dracula X Requiem bundle, which just came out on the PlayStation 4. But it's clear that Konami's best days are behind them. Konami was once one of the greatest video game developers on the planet, and had great games in every genre on every platform. And their games released in the 80s and the 90s will always be treasured by any gamer of that era, regardless of where the company is today. But still, as podcast favorite of ours, Jim Sterling said, fuck Konami, because Konami is Konami, and Konami is the worst. That is your history of Konami.
All right, thanks, Chris. And yes, Konami is Konami, and Konami is the worst.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the history, I think it's important that we kind of talk about the games and Konami itself and what we perceived of Konami throughout the years. I think we both experienced Konami during the 8 and 16-bit generation quite a bit. I know I did, at least. Shane, how about you?
Yeah, I think it was more 16-bit for me. I think that's where I kind of picked up more, honestly. But yeah, some experience with both for sure. So when we were kind of prepping for this episode, we put together relatively brief lists of some of the best games, in our opinion, that Konami was associated with as we were growing up, that made a positive impact on our lives. And the lists, actually, looking comparatively, Chris's list and mine are fairly similar in many, many ways. Because if you don't know, once you hear them, you'll realize just how big Konami was, and how much of an impact they had on the video game industry as a whole. So I guess kind of starting with those earlier titles, the 8 and 16-bit, era stuff. For me, definitely Castlevania. That goes without question. And for me personally, that one again, I didn't really get into that until more of like the SNES time frame. Like Castlevania 4 was one that I played a lot. Contra is definitely up there, but Contra 3, The Alien Wars, is still to this day one of my favorite games. So, fun fact about that, by the way, I have been told that Contra 3 is a difficult game, much in the way that Contra, just as a series, has always been known as a relatively unforgiving experience. But for that one in particular, I don't see it, but that's because that was one of the titles that I played so much as a kid that even to this day, I can sit down in front of a Super Nintendo and play Contra 3 from start to finish in one sitting.
Now, see, that's one of those games that I go back and play. I remember being a lot better at it than I am, apparently.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was just better at it when I was younger. I think we all have those types of games where we're like, man, why can't I get past this part? I remember just destroying it when I was a kid. Contra 3 is definitely one of those games where I start to have serious issues. Is the level when the 2 Terminators come out. And I can still play that game up until about that point. And then I just get my ass reamed. It's quite embarrassing. I don't know how to beat those guys efficiently. But up until that point,
I can tell you that's super easy.
Kill them.
When they come out, all you got to do is just jump up, climb up the wall, and hang from one of the corners of the room and shoot diagonally, and they jump through your bullets, and you can just melt them that way. And they usually can't hit you there.
Oh.
Super easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to figure these things out.
Well, see, but that's like exactly what I mean, right? Is like the only reason I know that is because I played that game to death. So like I know every weapon drop, I know every enemy pattern. Like that's just burned into my brain probably until I die.
Right. Well, also the Mode 7 top-down levels, I am terrible at those now.
Oh yeah.
I know for a fact I was not terrible at them when I was younger. Like I used to actually be pretty good at them, but
to be fair, those levels are also
correctly now
not super great. Like the game as a whole is good, but those top-down levels are kind of garbage. The second one especially, with all the spinning tiles and places where you can just fall to your death, like that one's not fun. But But anyway, so that one, I got Life Force on there. That's an 8-bit era one. That was actually one of the games that I did own for my NES. Never actually got very far in that one, by the way.
It's easier when you have an NES advantage.
Yeah, I bet, yeah. But Konami was also associated with a lot of really standout arcade titles, too. And so, like, the Simpsons arcade and the X-Men arcade game, like, those two are amazing. And I will take an opportunity to play those anytime I see a cabinet somewhere, because they're awesome. And then, like just a few others. Turtles in Time was one of the huge ones for the Super Nintendo for me. That's the other one, I think, of the Super Nintendo era that I can do in one sitting, like even now. That game is actually, I think, one of my few claims to fame is being able to just play that from beginning to end. I remember I went to an event several years ago that was Ninja Turtles themed. It was a video game event, and I just sat down in front of Super Nintendo, popped that thing in, and I just blasted through that game solo. And I had people watching, and they were just like amazed. And I was like, oh, I mean, okay, I guess. Like to me, it was just like, yeah, man, I've played this like 1,000 times, but apparently that's impressive. I don't know.
Turtles in Time is probably my second favorite beat 'em up of all time. It's so well made. I could play it today with no issues. Just like you said, if I sit down, I see a Turtles in Time on a machine, and it's functional, and people are going to play it, I'm going to play it sometime during the night.
Oh hell yeah!
If I'm at an area, you got to play Turtles in Time. It is such a good game.
Don't play that shitty remake that they did of it though. It's garbage.
I don't even think you can get to it anymore. I think it's a digital casualty.
Well, that's probably for the best. I actually still own it, and yeah, it sucks. It was a travesty, but and then I think I had Zombies Ate My Neighbors on there. That was a 16-bit game too. That one was classic. And also, Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego? Because I used to love the whole Carmen Sandiego series when I was younger. I watched the TV show all the time, and playing the game was always a fun time. And that was one of those ones that you could kind of get, you could get past your parents with that one because you're just like, you play it under the auspices of it being like an educational experience.
Right, and I had to do a double take when I saw that, and I had to check on it because I always thought the Carmen Sandiego series was made exclusively by Broderbund.
Right.
I didn't, and I looked it up. Yeah, I mean, Where in Time and Carmen Sandiego was definitely made for the NES by Konami. I'm sure that it was kind of like one of those how Sega used to license a lot of the games that couldn't come over due to Nintendo's crazy policies and how they were pretty much extorting third-party developers back in the day. So it might have something to do with that. But I do know Broderbund later in the NES started making their own games.
Yeah.
So I'm still surprised that Konami was able to develop and publish that for the NES.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was actually surprised to see that on their list as well, because though I did have some experience with that particular version of the game, I think the majority of my personal time with like the Carmen Sandiego and some of those other like Math Blasters and those other educational games, which by the way, we totally need to do an episode about at some point, was basically exclusively on the PC.
Oh, I miss a lot of those educational PC games, but
those were good, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of my list. Oh, and I guess I didn't mention it, but obviously Silent Hill, it's one of my favorite game series ever. Or at least 1 through 3. I will also accept 4, the Rome, but as far as I'm concerned, the first 3 are kind of the definitive Silent Hill games.
So, like Shane said, a lot of our interest in Konami games are essentially the same. Castlevania for me, much like him. As long as we're talking 8 and 16-bit games growing up, big fan more so of Castlevania 3. And I really think that's an underappreciated Castlevania. I don't think that gets nearly the amount of love it does, even though it's probably the most prominent in terms of media, especially if you watch Netflix recently. That entire series is based off Castlevania 3, and a lot of the lore of Castlevania comes from that game.
And it's also really good.
It's so good. Don't know where Grant is in the Netflix series. Maybe he'll be in season 3. Hashtag where's Grant? Let's get him in there. But yes, the show is good and the video game is good. They're very good. But when most people think of the NES, they think of the original Castlevania and Castlevania 2, which are fine. But Castlevania 2 actually is not fine. But it's fine to think of Castlevania 1 as
terrible night
the
to have
definitive
a curse.
Castlevania game. Yeah, it was a terrible night to play that game. It's a terrible day to play that game. It's a terrible time to play that game. Anyway, moving on. Castlevania is a great series, especially on the NES. And like you're right, Super Castlevania 4, I think, really convinced a lot of people that there was a difference in power between the NES and SNES that just couldn't be made up for by staying with an NES. It was extremely beautiful. The music was amazing.
Plus, I really appreciated the improved controls also.
Yes. It was amazing controls. You can just move your whip in any of the 8 directions, and
and you can make your whip all floppy and just
floppy
swing
whip.
it around.
Yeah, swing your whip around.
As you do.
Have a good time with it.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's something I think that was big about Konami before I start talking about my favorite games between the 8 and 16-bit generation here is when they started out as that company, and I think it's something they really lost moving forward, especially after the 32-bit generation and moving into the PS2, is Konami used to be a game, along with Capcom, that they were a game company where their games were synonymous with great music. Phenomenal music, that timeless music. Castlevania has some of the best music of the 8-bit generation. Even their bad games, like The Legend of Bayou Billy, have some really good tunes.
I almost put that on my list just as a joke.
Yeah, it's a bad game. I guess the Japanese version is actually relatively playable. The Turtles games had great music.
Oh yeah.
Just so many games had really, really catchy tunes. And it was really great to see that. And moving into the 16-bit generation, it continued to get better. You had like Sparkster had some great music. Castlevania 4 and Castlevania Bloodlines had amazing music. It just really never stopped with the presentation and what they were able to deliver, and I think that's why a lot of people loved Konami. I mean, the opening theme to the NES Contra is, you play that song and anyone who played an NES back in the late 80s, early 90s instantly recognizes it as Contra. I mean, as long as they play Contra, of course. Everyone knows it.
Of course.
And that just seemed to get away from them as time went on, but I think that could really be said about a lot of game companies, especially that were popular back then. Because, of course, no one today even talks about Sunsoft, but they were so defining, and the games were so solid. Other things, yeah, of course, Life Force. I had Gradius on there. Gradius is one of those defining shooters, where you get to select what kind of upgrade you're going to have throughout the game and how you pick them up and what you do at your specials, and add a little bit more of a level of tactics to your shooter. And that's pretty much it for my 8 and 16-bit. Of course, 8 and 16-bit, not as much exposure. I have a lot more games in the 32-bit era that we can get to probably now, unless you have anything you really want to touch on what Konami was like back in the 16-bit time frame.
No, not really. I mean, I didn't follow this format at all. I just kind of talked about all my favorite shit, so it's whatever. But
screw it then.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that came to mind when you're talking about the music though is Alley Cat Blues from Turtles in Time is just an amazing backing track. It's so good. I mean, the music just in general from that game is awesome, but that's the one that immediately comes to mind.
And there's, of course, also some other hidden gems that I didn't put on here, mostly because I didn't play them. But like I said, Sparkster, I didn't put that on my list, but that's a good name. Or Rocket Knight, whatever it's called, for the Genesis. Contra Hardcore, I didn't like too much.
I tried that one. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan.
It's just balls difficult. It's just way too hard, and that's its greatest flaw. And Axelay is another game I don't think a lot of people who know about.
I think I have a copy of that.
For the Super Nintendo?
I think so.
It uses Mode 7. It's a gorgeous game.
Yeah.
Really gorgeous game. It's just not a lot of people really talk about it. Maybe there's a good reason for it. But they were really hitting their stride back then, and then you move over to the PlayStation. Not so much the N64, but the PlayStation, and Konami just continued to hit it out of the park. I mean, I think we both agree, and we've talked about this previously, that Castlevania Symphony of the Night is probably one of the greatest games ever created.
Oh, yeah. And, you want to talk about music, man, that Bloody Tears track is probably one of, if not my favorite video game song ever. That's not that I have my phone on anything but vibrate most of the time these days, but, that's my ringtone.
You do know that Bloody Tears wasn't in the PlayStation release, though, right?
Actually, no, I didn't know that.
It's actually in the Saturn release.
Really?
It's for one of the extra. Yeah, it's for one of the extra areas. I think it's in the basement area where all the weird trees are and shit.
Huh. That's funny,
all the
remixes. I've always associated it with that. I just assumed it was always part of it.
Yeah, it's the Vampire Killer, Beginnings, and Bloody Tears remakes are all in the Saturn versions. They're not in the original PlayStation release.
Huh. Well, there you go. I learned something today.
Yes. But you do have to play the Saturn version, and if you've played any other version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, you're going to be disappointed. It's very much a flawed game. It doesn't make any sense that it's that flawed. But, of course, Silent Hill also released for the PlayStation, which a lot of people argue is a better game in terms of survival horror than Resident Evil. I would say it's just a better game overall.
I would agree.
I would say it's it's not a better game than Resident Evil 2, but it's a better horror game than Resident Evil 2.
And then I would go ahead and argue that Silent Hill 2 is a better horror game than Resident Evil 2. So there you go.
Silent Hill 2 is probably, again, it's one of the best games of all time. If you actually sit down and you take the time to play it. And if you have an Xbox, you can play the expanded version, which has more stuff to it. I think it's Silent Hill 2 Restless Dreams for the Xbox, which expands upon the original game. But that's, if you're seeing a lot of patterns here with what you see with Konami, is they were limitless in their genre. I have 2 games on my list, Azure Dreams and the Suikoden series, which are RPGs. Metal Gear Solid was, stealth, tactical, espionage action is what I think they have in the fucking box or whatever they want to call themselves. But like that was a different genre. Castlevania is a platformer, and they pretty much went with the dungeon exploring aspect of Metroid and made their own kind of subgenre, Egovania or Metroidvania, out of it. So they even had sports games, if you want to go far back as Double Dribble or Blades of Steel. They made those.
I was just going to say Blades of Steel. That almost made it onto my list, too. But.
Yeah. Fantastic games. Then they had a extremely popular sports series in Japan mostly, like their soccer series that sold like hotcakes. You had a game like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which really defines any genre. That was popular. Shooters like Life Force and Gradius. If you pick a genre, Konami pretty much covered it. I would say the only one they didn't really make a good showing in was fighters and first-person shooters. I can't think of any Konami games that excel in either of those categories.
Yeah, nothing really comes to mind. I mean, granted, the first-person shooter genre was probably a little later than when they were kind of hitting their prime. So I think some other companies probably took the lead on that one. I mean, we talk about id Software in our previous Doom episode. Like, they're kind of the ones that defined that. But yeah, like there is a through line through all of this that is common, and that is that for that particular era, you could make the argument pretty solidly, I think, that Konami almost defined a lot of these genres, which isn't to say that there weren't other companies or other games in these genres, of course, but when you think of some of the most identifiable titles in each of these, separate subgenres of video game, most of the time you end up thinking about a title that was associated with Konami. They were just that good.
Mm-hmm. I think that the closest company you could compare to Konami would have to be Capcom.
Yeah. For you mean for that time frame?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I mean, the only thing I think, and they both had their advantages. So Capcom, I wouldn't say they had their share of platformers, right? Like like action platformers. When you think of Strider and Mega Man and Bionic Commando. Mm-hmm. But I don't really feel like they went into the 32-bit era the same way that Konami did. When you compare, any of their 2D platformers to what Konami was offering on the Game Boy Advance with the Castlevania series. Like, they still had their Mega Man games, of course. But Konami was really doing it better. And you could say, in the RPG category, which neither Capcom or Konami were really known much for. Capcom still had Breath of Fire, but it never really matched what people think about retrospectively about, Suikoden, mm-hmm. which spawned 5 games, where Breath of Fire kind of went down in flames. That was terrible. Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter, and hasn't really recovered. Suikoden made 5 games, and I think they suffered death at the hands of the fact that it's Konami, whereas Capcom just continues to churn things out because, of course, they're greedy bastards, just like Konami is too. I mean, let's face facts.
Just in a different way.
Yeah, and I would say it's really hard at the end of the day to say which company is better. But today we're talking about Konami, so I'm just going to say, for the sake of this episode, Konami is going to slightly edge out today. Maybe on the Capcom episode, I'll say they're better and just make all of you pissed off. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll keep you guessing. But yeah, so that's a good segue, actually, I think. So we've kind of talked about some of our favorite titles from the yesteryear of Konami. But why don't you lead us into why Konami has the reputation it has now and kind of where that led.
So, like, you go back to the history, right? That I was talking about, and at the beginning of the PS3, I wouldn't say it was really the beginning of the PS3. I mean, things were still looking good for it because for a long this time, Konami kind of made their bed with the PlayStation 3, with Metal Gear Solid 4. That was like the biggest game the PlayStation 3 had forever. Mm-hmm. Sony thought that was going to push systems. Unfortunately, the PlayStation 3 cost $600. Yeah. And the Xbox 360 only cost $400. I mean, it's big money either way. But the Xbox 360 was out a year prior and costed like $100 to $200 less than the PlayStation 3 you actually would want to buy. So, Metal Gear Solid 4 was that big game. Now, Konami was still pushing some other games during that time, most notably probably Yu-Gi-Oh! Was probably making them more money than anything. If anyone was around during that time, I would be shocked if Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't make Konami the most amount of money during that time. But I think that showed Konami where money in video gaming probably really was. And it's not necessarily in making quality games that everyone can play and in making new IPs and, being that really good, genuine, kind of happy-go-lucky big name brand, but in exploiting your franchises for a maximum return on profit. And that's just a personal belief. That's not anything I looked up and can tell you exclusively.
Well, obviously it was in the heart of the cards, Chris.
Of course. I don't know if that's actually a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. I don't watch that crap. My oldest son loves Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't think he actually plays it though. But he watches the cartoons. But you really start to see a turn after Metal Gear Solid 4. You start seeing less really big releases. You start seeing Hideo Kojima really like they put all their bucks into Hideo Kojima carrying the company as their big name brand, while they kind of made shovelware for everything else and hoped it would sell. Like they kept on re-releasing Dance Dance Revolution. They kept on re-releasing, crappy sports games, but they were making money. So they're like, Hideo Kojima make all these great games, and Hideo Kojima is great, right? He gets a lot of credit for stuff like Snatcher. He made Metal Gear Solid, which is fantastic. Metal Gear Solid 2, which is a bait and switch. You have Metal Gear Solid 3, which is a fantastic game. Zone of the Enders, I love Zone of the Enders. I think it's a really fun and entertaining game. But the problem with Hideo Kojima games is Hideo Kojima loves Hideo Kojima and what Hideo Kojima thinks.
True.
And if you play any of his games, you'll know that.
He's perhaps what one might call a bit self-indulgent.
Oh, absolutely. He is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He is a creative force for sure, and part of what comes with someone being at that level is they are usually, let's go with, eccentric. And he certainly is. We follow him on Instagram, and he just sometimes he just posts the most random shit, which is completely expected from Kojima. But yeah, sorry, I didn't want to I put you off track there, but
oh no, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just I think at that point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but especially right around the early 2000s. Because if you go, for instance, if you're listening to this, go ahead and go take a look at the wiki page of list of Konami games, and you'll see right around late 90s, early 2000s, there's this very obvious shift from a varied lineup of different titles in different genres and what have you, to just a wall of Dance Dance Revolution spin-offs and re-releases with a small smattering of some sports games, as Chris mentioned. And then so at that point you kind of have to figure, right, that the only real creative energy left at the company was Kojima and the team that he was working with.
Well, Iga left,
right,
and Iga was the one carrying the Castlevania brand on the portable consoles, and from what I understand, they didn't want to let him make a Castlevania game for the mainstream home consoles, which a lot of, obviously, for obvious reasons, pissed off Castlevania faithful. They weren't getting a genuine Castlevania experience. Now, another reason for that, of course, is because Iga had a chance with the 3D Castlevanias, Castlevania for the Nintendo 64, Lament of Innocence, and Curse of Darkness. Curse of Darkness, that's what it's called. And they didn't turn out so well. They didn't get a lot of glowing reviews, so to say. But
they were mediocre at best.
Yeah,
like Layman of Innocence isn't a terrible game. It's just not great.
It's not laughably bad with laughable bad camera angles. It's just a game. That's all it is. Yeah. It's critical to understanding Castlevania lore, but nothing you can't understand on a Castlevania lore wiki page.
Right.
But I can understand that from a Castlevania perspective. But Iga left not too long. He probably I don't know exactly when he left. He probably left after Order of Ecclesia for the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, and you still had Hideo Kojima. So you start, and this is something that happened with a lot of Japanese companies where they started, exporting their IPs or outsourcing their IPs to Western companies to get that Western market where most money was being made. So now you start to see Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which is headed up by Hideo Kojima and Mercury Steam. So what you get is this very, very stagnant kind of pompous Castlevania, I would say. It's very uppity. There's something not right with it, is what I'm trying to say.
It's a little bit up its own ass, which in no uncertain terms is also kind of how Kojima is on occasion, but
Right. But you started seeing that. You didn't get a Silent Hill game after Silent Hill 4, right? There was no Silent Hill 5. Was there?
There's no mainline ones, but you've got some of the other ones like, the hell was
Origins
it? Shattered Memories or something like that.
Shattered Memories.
None of which were decent at all, yeah.
Right. They didn't live up to the series standard, and I think they moved away from the series standard starting with Silent Hill 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did. And just really quickly, because I know we probably should start wrapping up here shortly, but I basically give that like an honorable mention when I talk about Silent Hill games, because it's not bad per se. They were kind of being a little bit more experimental with the how the game played and some of the expectations of longtime Silent Hill players, and I will give them kudos for trying something a bit different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of where things took a turn, and then that series has never really recovered, and I don't suspect that it will.
Yeah. So anyway, trying to streamline it and get to the point, Hideo Kojima was everything that Konami had, and eventually Konami started pissing off Hideo Kojima. Reports started coming out that they're exploiting their employees. They were giving bad recommendations to their employees if they left the company. They're making them work ridiculous hours that would make someone at Rockstar Gaming's blush. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look
Topical.
It up. And overworking employees. So they started getting really bad reputations. In addition, game series that had been on the shelves for a lot started making reappearances, but on Pachinko machines. So
yeah,
that's
what was
not
that?
Good business.
What was that? What was that clip that Jim Sterling was using forever? I was like, pull the lever. Is that what it was?
Pull the lever. The Silent Hill Pachinko machine.
Oh God.
Or what was Castlevania, like erotic horror or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
For their Pachinko machine.
So here's the thing, right? Once they had their last kind of pillar of credibility, I'm going to say, sort of, exit the company on not great terms, which was mostly their doing. They kind of turned inward and just started leveraging their existing IPs in the most like cynical, money grubbing way possible. And I'm gonna go back to this because damn it, I'm still salty, but this is that right there. That's called foreshadowing, ladies and gentlemen, because if you ever liked Blizzard, this is exactly where they're going. And I'm going to say that now. When a company stops actually innovating and stops creating new quality content and instead turns inward and starts focusing on just regurgitating old stuff to play on your nostalgia, that is when things are just going to go directly down the drain. And that's exactly what happened with Konami. And that is exactly what is happening with Blizzard now. And we are going to have this conversation again in, let's say, 5 years. And I guarantee you that that is where Activision Blizzard is going to be at.
Oh yeah, and that was extremely showed its head too with Konami, and it's going to happen with Blizzard. I don't think they really have a lot of the figureheads that Konami had with Kojima. I think that's what really blew up with Konami is like with PT, the playable trailer for Silent Hills. After Kojima split after the release of Metal Gear Solid 5 and they canceled PT, you can't download PT anymore.
Yeah, no, I know.
Even if you erase it off your PlayStation 4, you cannot download it. So consumer respect for Konami is probably at zero. People who used to love Konami for what it was in the 80s and 90s, as I said earlier, they realize now that this Konami is not making games for them anymore. They are doing whatever they can to turn a profit, and that's pretty much all they're doing. And I get that's the point of business, right? You cannot be mad at a company for wanting to turn profit.
No, I mean, listen, we're not
shitting on their fans.
Yeah, we're not naive in that respect, right? I mean, both you and I understand that at the end of the day, a corporation's main goal is to, generate profit for shareholders. That's it.
Right.
So whatever they have to do that, that's what they're going to do. But what immediately comes to mind is that ubiquitous Batman quote now, where you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And that's exactly what's happening with these companies, is that you have these game development houses or production companies, what have you, that were heroes to the gaming community for so long, but they've just gone on so long at this point that they're just devolving into, these, like I said, these very insular, inward facing corporations who are caring less and less about their public image to the gaming community and are more concerned with how they can wring every red cent out of the goodwill that they generated over the last few decades. And it's sad.
It is. Do you think part of it could be that everyone thinks that every video game company should kind of be like Nintendo, where they've held on to pretty much the same platform and same core belief system throughout the years and hasn't really deviated much from what they are as a company and as a game company?
I mean, I don't want to put Nintendo on a pedestal because they've certainly had their share of missteps. But
certainly.
But as far as a way forward as a company, yeah, to a certain degree, I think so. I mean, on the other side of that same token, though, Nintendo kind of gets shit because of that very thing, because people, say oh, well, man, that's 2018, why don't they have a good, friend system, or they're just getting around now to being okay with online multiplayer, for Christ's sake. There's a negative side to the way that they do business as well, in that they always seem to be one step behind the curve.
Right.
But overall, yeah, I mean, and it still remains to be seen too, because they might just have a longer trajectory, right, than some of these other companies, because as much as I think it's a smart business move to leverage mobile platforms, I have yet to actually be impressed with any of the mobile offerings that Nintendo has put out. They aren't anything special. I mean, granted, Dragalia Lost evidently is doing gangbusters for them as far as revenue, so that's obviously going to continue. But that is also concerning to me as a longtime Nintendo fan, that they are just taking longer to eventually get to that same cynical place that a lot of these other companies have arrived at.
At Electronic Activision Arts?
Yes. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing in closing.
Yes.
My reaction to, and this is me in closing, I swear it's in closing. My reaction to Konami is I don't necessarily hate Konami as a company. As Shane said, we both completely understand that the primary interest of a company is to make money.
Right.
And if what a company did, the thing that you love for a company to do does not make that company money anymore, they're not going to do it. So if Konami continued to do the things that I loved about Konami and they didn't make any money, then they shouldn't do those things as a company. But when you hear how they treat their employees, how they treat their IPs, how they treat the regard of the consumer and fans like me towards their IPs, it does genuinely earn them some saltiness from us. And at the end of the day, if they make more money from Pachinko and they make more money from exploiting their IPs to make money from Pachinko, I completely understand that, and I can be upset about it, but at the end of the day, they're a business, and that's their job. It's to make money, and it's not necessarily to make me happy if people other than me will give them money for no matter what they do.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a pretty good way to sum it up, honestly. I don't think I have a whole lot to add to that. I will say just... in addition, a small thing is that honestly, I think as the old grognards that we are, it's hard for us to let go of, some of these big names that have been a huge part of our lives. But I think we have to, because eventually they all end up in this place, and we instead should be looking towards some of the newer batches of developers out there. We have an explosion of indie game developers today, and even just smaller companies, some of which have folks that splintered off from some of these big monolithic corporations.
By Bloodstained.
Yeah, Bloodstained, for instance. And so I think we need to be looking there, because there's going to be a new generation of these companies that will, inevitably follow this same track, I think. But we should at least be there at the beginning so that we can enjoy them when they're at their best before they just become a giant soulless corporation.
Which, let's be honest, every corporation is essentially a soulless corporation.
Eventually.
All right, so I think that wraps it up for myself. Does that wrap it up for you there, Shane?
It does, yeah. I think we're, we started out with the goal of having like half-hour episodes, and then we were like, 45 minutes sounds good, and now we're at an hour. I promise that we won't go over an hour. That's our hard cutoff. So with that being said, I think we got about 2 minutes left before that happens. So, I think going forward, by the way, I'm just going to abbreviate sort of our piece that we do about how you can get in touch with us, because, there's no sense in repeating it every time, and I'm sure you don't want to hear it. So by now, you probably know that you can get in touch with us in several different ways. If you want to send an email, it's podcast@retrohangover.com. And outside of that, we exist on most of the popular social platforms, and you can find us pretty much anywhere by just searching for Retro Hangover. So reach out to us on any of those spots. Lately, we've been most active on Instagram for sure, so you can get in touch with us there.
And we are small enough to pretty much respond and read every single one of your comments. So take advantage of it while you still can, because we will pay attention.
Yeah, don't wait until we become a giant soulless corporation.
Yes.
All right, well, until next time.
Happy gaming.